Well, I mean, yeah, I always say it doesn't look like anybody's coming through, and I feel like I jinx it every time. So there may be some folks who come in a little bit later. I'll try to keep an eye on the participants coming through the room and try to let them through as they come. But at this point, I think we're good to go ahead and get started. So I'm Aden from the Cami Customer Success Team. I'm going to be taking you through how to use Cami with Canvas. I understand we've got a mix of sort of people who may not have seen too much about Cami and people who have been using it for a while. So I'll try to sort of keep this broad. We'll go into some use cases that hopefully you haven't seen before, and we'll use, I've got two demo windows here set up on my side. We'll go ahead and share at this point. And what we'll do is we'll start off by creating an assignment as the teacher here. And then we can go in as a student and open that up, and I can sort of show you how that looks from that side. Once we've done that, we'll also go ahead and go through the grading process. So we'll use the student side as a point to talk about the tools and some of the ways you can use them. And also, just go ahead and let that person in. Oh, thanks, Christy, you've got it. Thank you for that. So we'll start out on the teacher side and go ahead and create this assignment. So I'm imagining at this point that you all have Cami set up as an external tool in Canvas. If it's not showing up for you, I think that's probably something you would need to check in with the Canvas admin for the school just to make sure that that's added there so that everybody has access to it. If you guys have been using it already, I'm imagining that's already in place. So we'll go ahead and create the assignment here. So I'll call this, give this assignment a name here. I'll leave the description blank, and we just need to scroll down to the submission type here to get started with the integration. So we want to go ahead and select external tool. And once we've done that, we want to go ahead and find the external tool for Cami. Now, you should ideally only have one instance of Cami showing up. I have a few just because I actually use this demo account for test purposes as well. If we're having issues with Cami, I try to sort of test that on these accounts. So that's why I've got a few different versions of that set up. Once we've selected that Cami assignment option, it's going to go ahead and give us this Google Drive file picker. So that will allow us to select the resource from our class. Now, I've actually previously prepared this resource with some annotations ahead of time. So I can go ahead and take you through that. A few more folks coming through. So I'll just let them in. And once we've selected the resource, we just need to hit select, and then this link will update here to reflect that change. I also recommend loading Cami in a new tab because although you can run it inside of Canvas and have the students complete their work there, it will reduce the space that the students have to complete the exercise. So if you want the students to have the full window, that loading a new tab option is a good one. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save and publish that, and we'll go ahead and push that out to the class. So at this point, we'll switch over to the teachers, or switch over to the student side. One thing I will mention just before I do that is if you are pushing this out as if you've brought it in from, say, a template course or a blueprint course, and you are not the original file owner, one thing you will need to do if you are not the person who owns that file in your Google Drive is to load that tool in Cami as the teacher. Doing so will transfer the correct ownership permissions for that file over to you, and then when the student turns in their work, they won't have any issues with there. Let's go ahead and let some people in. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and jump over to the student side now, and we'll go ahead and open that assignment up. So I'll just refresh on this end.
Hey, Aiden, I'll watch the people that come in for you so you don't have to worry about that, okay? Because I can do it since I'm supposed to. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Cool. Okay, so I'll go ahead and open this assignment up and click that button again to open Cami in a new tab. So it's going to import the information from Canvas and just disclose it. So just go on. Okay, so up at the top here, under the save icon, there will be a submit button. So this is how the students can return the work to you once they are completed. once they've completed the exercise they're doing. We can also see the sort of save status here. So there is an auto save that runs every 3 minutes. So if if there's a change that's made inside of that window and you want to quickly save that, you can hit that Save Now button. Also, hitting Submit will also trigger an auto save at the end. So I'm going to just talk through each of these tools one by one, and we'll just go through each of these headings. So the first set of tools we'll talk about are the Select tools. There's the Select tool itself, the Hand tool, and Select annotations under this heading. So if we want to, I'm just going to go ahead and mark up the page a little bit so I have something to work with here. So go ahead and put a drawing up at the top here. Just using my finger on the touch screen here, so this is not going to be a work of artistic genius, but it will work for our purposes at least. So if I have the Select tool, I mouse over an individual annotation, I can go in and modify that after the fact. So if I want to change the color of those of the highlight, or if I want to copy the underlying text and put that into a text comment, I can. We can also convert this to a text comment as well. So that little speech bubble icon will allow us to take notes in relation to this text. There are also some other comment options. I'll talk through those a little bit more detail when we get to that section. So if I just go ahead and use the Hand tool, I'll just briefly mention it because this isn't a tool that is terribly frequently used in the interface. You can use it if you have issues with the scrolling, if you have issues with the mouse scroll wheel or the trackpad scrolling. That can be a good option to move around the page. Otherwise, I tend to find it doesn't get used all that often. The Select Annotations tool, though, is quite useful. So if we click and drag over a group of drawings like this, we can then move those around the page. We can also copy and paste those to other parts of the document if we need to. So if the student is doing some work and they run out of space, they can easily use that to copy paste down to another part of the document. You can also change the thickness of the lines or the color of those lines as well. Now I'm going to delete this because we'll actually use this space later on when I come back to talk about the text box tool. But if we first just go down to the dictionary tool and text-to-speech tool, I'll just talk through those first. So dictionary tool is very straightforward. If we just click on a word in the text, it will give us the Oxford Dictionary definition of that word. So that can be quite useful. If the students are doing, say, a reading exercise, or if they're doing a science exercise and they're coming across jargon or technical language that they're not familiar with, they can look up those terms without having to leave Cami. There's also a text-to-speech tool. If I just quickly switch this over here, you'll be able to hear the output. So hopefully you heard that all right. I'll just quickly switch my setup back over so that you guys can hear me all right again. So there are some options with this text-to-speech interface here. We have the ability to stop the text from reading if we want to just quickly stop that. You can also hit spacebar, and that will also stop the text mid-read. If you don't stop the text from reading, it will essentially, if we haven't selected a specific part of the text, if we just clicked a word, it will go and read sentence by sentence until it hits the last sentence of that page, and then it will stop. You could scroll down to the next page and hit play if you wanted to resume reading from that next page. There's also options for jumping back and forth between sentences and looping the text as well. There are also different language options. So these will be based on what is installed on the device. One thing to note is that this does not work consistently for translation purposes. So if you were to select, say, a Spanish voice pack here and then try to read out the English text, it isn't going to sort of consistently translate that, unfortunately. If we had a Spanish document and we read that with the Spanish voice pack, that would be fine. That will read out without issue. But I just wanted to address that because that's a question I often get asked in relation to that tool there. So you can also dial up and down the speed at which that reads out, so you can make that faster or slower as you need to. There is also a different, the different voice options as mentioned before. So moving on to the markup tools next. So if we want to go in and mark up the text and point out some points of interest here. So for example, I've given each of these, as a teacher, I've given each of these questions a different highlight color so that the students can color coordinate their notes. That can mean that we can then come in and have similarly marked up text that will sort of be automatically color coded. If we click and drag over the text itself, that will annotate, and this will depend on the option that you have selected. So if you have underline selected, it will underline that text, and strike through will strike through the text as well. So there's also the box highlighter under this heading. So you can use this, if you want to highlight a non-text element on the page. So for example, the signature at the top here, that is not necessarily text on the page, but we can still nevertheless highlight over the top of that. Okay, so the markup tools are generally used to sort of point out some points of interest within the text. We do also have the comment tools as well, and there are a lot of different options under this comment heading. I'll talk through each of them and some possible use cases on both the student side and also the teacher side when you're putting in instructions for the students. So first tool on the list here is the text comment. As mentioned, we can mouse over markup on the page and turn that into a text comment if we want to. So if we want to come back to this text and then take a note in relation to this highlight, we can then do so. When you press enter, that will commit the comment to the page. If you click back into that comment, it will allow you to edit that after the fact. So we can put in some additional text if we want to. You can also reply to your own comments or to the comments made by other users. So if you have a follow-on thought from your original note that you want to be separate, you can sort of put that in as a reply. Or if you're marking this as the teacher, you can reply directly to the student comments. If you want to give feedback that way. So if you haven't already highlighted the text, you can also click and drag over the text on the page, and then that will select that text and generate a text comment. So then we can put a note in here, and that's quite straightforward. There is also one last way that you can create a comment, and that is just by clicking a point on the page, and then that will create an anchor point that this comment is attached to. So one area this can be really useful in is because you can actually move around these anchor points after the comment has been created. If you have a lot of annotations on one part of the page, it can help to put in these as anchor points, because then you can sort of space things out and have it sort of more a bit more nicely readable for the students. The other thing to note is that you can also put these anchor points in on top of images. So if, for example, you wanted to do this in the context of like a map, find the country on the map exercise, you could bring in a map as an image in CanMe, and then you can drop text comments on top of those different countries and label them that way. Okay, so moving on to the voice comment next. So if we want the students to, I just realized I've missed something. Just before we go into that, there is a voice typing option rather than the voice comments. So this here, if I click that little microphone icon, this will take what I'm saying on the microphone and allow that to be transcribed into this comment section. So it's usually pretty good at resolving different patterns of speech and accents. It can also automatically detect languages. So if the student is speaking like Spanish into the microphone, it'll automatically detect that and then put the accent markers over particular points. So that could be quite useful as well. Now, like I was saying before, with the voice comments, if you're doing a reading exercise or you're doing a different language class with the students, this can be a really useful way for the students to sort of record themselves speaking into the microphone, and then you can listen back to that when you go through the grading interface to sort of mark that. There's also the option for you to be able to put in voice comments as the teacher. So that could be useful if you want to put in some audio along with the exercise. there is a 5-minute limit on the clips, but there is no limit on the number of clips you can put into the document. So you have a whole series of these clips all throughout the document at various points. So if I press stop, that will commit that to the page. We can then write a text reply immediately after that if we want to put that in context. So if you're putting this in as a teacher, you might say something like, listen to this if you get stuck with, exercise 1C or something like that below, just so that students have some context about where it fits into the exercise. There's also video comments, so pretty straightforward. So this will use the microphone on the device, and that will allow us to also record for our webcam as well. So if we want to record a little explanation video for the students, like if we have a whiteboard on the other side of the room, we can sort of rotate our screen and go through some concepts there, and then that will be recorded for the students. So that could be a nice way if you want to talk through a concept in a little bit more detail with the students. That's a nice way to sort of have that be recorded. You just need to record it once, and then that will go out across all the student copies, provided that you've put in that annotation prior to the assignment being created. So when we press done, that will commit that to the page. So we can then have that be saved. And there's a 20-minute limit on the video and screen capture comments, but no limit to the number of clips you can put into the page there. So we also have the screen capture comment here, which allows you to record your screen rather than recording from the webcam. I've recorded previously on this assignment, I've created a screen capture video, so I'll quickly play that for you guys. Because I'm on a Chromebook, I can't record one of these from scratch for you guys while we're screen recording, but I'll just quickly play this, and then hopefully that will sort of give you an idea of how that could be used.
Aden, we can't really hear the sound coming from your computer.
Oh, I see. Okay, I apologize. I'm just trying to. Yeah, I'm trying to run the microphone from the speakers here, so that might be explaining why it's a little bit faint. Hopefully, that gives you at least a gist of sort of why that's happening. But this idea here, where we can record our screen, we can use that in a number of different use cases here. Let me just quickly switch my audio back over so you can hear me clearly. So we can record our screen, we can draw into the document, we can add in extra blank pages if we want to create extra whiteboarding space. So if you click this plus icon at the end of the document, you can always add in additional pages as needed. So I added into these pages, and then I sort of wrote out that problem while explaining it. You can also do things like bring in images. So this can be really useful if you want to create an explanation for like a science class or a social studies class, where you can bring in maps and other diagrams and visualizations there. So if we were doing a science class and we're covering something like the nitrogen cycle, we might bring in a diagram of the nitrogen cycle, and then we can draw on top of that and show the different products that get created at each of the processes there, and sort of talk through what's going on in a bit more detail. I find in general this screen capture comment has been really useful when doing remote learning. It just gives you a lot of flexibility about how you put the content into the page, and how that can be viewed after the fact. So if you're pressed for time during your catch-up sessions with the student, one thing you can do is put more detailed explanations in as screen capture comments, and then point to those and just say, look, okay, we're going to be covering this concept. I've got a much more detailed explanation on page 2 of the assignment. Go ahead and watch that when you open it up. And then, that gives the student a video that they can then refer to after the fact. So even once this assignment has been completed, they can always go back to this video in their Google Drive, and then, open that up in Gami and rewatch that if they need to. So those are the comment tools. They all occupy the margins of the page here. Still checking the chat. Oh, okay, cool. So yeah, the next tools that we'll cover are the text box tool and the equation tool. So the text box tool, we can use that to click into the document here, and then we can start typing out our answer. So if you want to have the students write directly into the page, this is how you can do it. If you want to have that occupy a specific space, like say, for example, we've got these boxes associated with these questions here. If we want to have that fit within that space, we can set the corners of that text box, and then that will fit nicely within this area. If you go down below the bottom of the page, it will expand to add extra lines. But in general, this is a really good way just to make sure that if you want the students to put their answer in a specific spot, that they can. Another thing that can be quite useful is creating text boxes ahead of time as the teacher. So what I've done here is I've actually put in 2 text boxes as the teacher, and that means that as a student, I can then click in and then start typing out my answer right away without having to create a text box. Now, if you create a text box like this and you haven't got anything inside of it, and you click out, it will actually automatically delete that text box. And the reason we do that is every time you click with the text box selected, you will create a new text box. So this is sort of to stop the page from being littered with a whole bunch of empty text boxes that you then have to go and clean up. But if you do want to have an empty text box that the students can use, the workaround to do that is just to put a single space into the text box. So that space will count as a character, and then that will be saved like this. So we can now mouse back in and click back into that space. Another tip that can make that more intuitively known to the students that there is a space to click into is if you put a background color into that text box there. Then it's more clear to the students that there is a space that they can then click into. So when we have the text box open, we've got this toolbar at the top. Got quite a few different options there. So I won't talk through all of the rich text options because I'm imagining a lot of those will be probably quite familiar from using things like Google Docs. What I will mention though is the voice typing that I showed you earlier with the text comments. So if you need to voice type inside of a text box and do more long form transcription, that can be done here. There is also a formula tool as well. So the formula tool allows you to insert essentially equation boxes inside of the text box. So I'll sort of show that in context here. So the equation tool, if you go ahead and insert one of those, that'll create a little box that we can then type in our math problems to. If we open the symbol palette, that will allow us to add in different symbols from here. So we can go ahead and put a fraction in if we want to. So I can go ahead and put in the numbers for that. If we put 2/3, that will put that in as a fraction as well. So there are keyboard shortcuts. So go ahead and write out the rest of this. So if you've got a single line problem that can be expressed in a single equation box, that will likely be sufficient for your purposes. However, if you are doing like an example I was trying to show earlier, like that physics example where you need to demonstrate your workings over multiple lines, that's where you can come in with the equation tool, and that will allow you to basically insert one of these equation boxes into the text box here. So let me just go ahead and do that. So we click the little F of X button. I'll make that a little bit bigger so that you can see it. So we'll put in our equation here. And it supports letters and numbers together, so it supports quite a lot of different algebra use cases as well. So 1 meter over 2 seconds, and then I'll put up my final answer here. So I can go 0.5 meters. I can go to the power of -1. And then you can move that around the page as needed, and everything will stay nicely formatted together. Moving on to the drawing tools and the shapes tools next. So, with the drawing tool, we can write directly into the page. Again, I'm using my finger here, so if my handwriting is a bit off, that'll be why. You can also hold down Shift to draw a line between 2 points. So if you're doing, a graphing exercise and using a stylus, you can use it that way. There is also an option if you go to the shapes tool, there is an option here to create lines here. So you can use that to draw lines, and you can see the angle here relative to that arc. Also, if you hold down Shift, it will lock that to be at a 22.5 degree increment. So that can be quite useful if you are wanting to put in a right angle line or a 45-degree angle line. Yeah, something like that. Also, the rectangle option here, so we can put in the rectangle here. If I hold down Shift, this is going to lock the sides to be at equal length. And we can also put in ellipses. The same idea applies here though, so we can hold down Shift and that will put in a perfect circle. We can also create triangles, and the triangles will give you the angles at each of these points here. So we can do that, or we can hold down Shift and that will give us this right angle triangle as well. Now there is an eraser option that deletes just drawings and shapes, and one that deletes all other annotation types as well. So the reason why we have this distinction in here is because when you add images, since images count as a type of annotation, if you have the all annotations option selected when you're annotating on top of a map, so for example, I'm just going to expand this out a little bit. So if we're doing a map exercise, I'm actually based down here in New Zealand. Make that a little bit more centered. There we go. And if I can come in and then draw on top of the map as well. So if I draw over here and I then want to go and erase that, if I've got the all annotations option selected, I'll actually run the risk of deleting the image as well as the drawing. So that's not ideal. So instead we could use the drawing and shapes option, and then that will delete just that layer of annotations and keep the image intact behind it. Some other options under the Add Media button. So we have the ability to add in files from local storage from Google Drive. These can be images, or they can also be videos as well. So if you have any previously recorded videos that you want to include, you can also bring those in. There is an integrated Google image search and an integrated YouTube search window as well. So if you want to bring in images or videos directly from those sources, if you don't have them on your on hand, you can bring them in that way as well. There's a stickers option under here as well. So this allows you to insert feedback stickers for the students. So that's a nice way when you're grading to sort of let students know how they're doing. There's also a signature option here. If we have a touchscreen device, we can just sign directly into this page. We can also send a sharing link to our phone if we don't happen to have a touchscreen on our main device. We can sign up with the phone, and then that will appear on this list below. So just use that option if that is what you need to do. And then we can drop that in, and then that will be saved on the page. Okay, so at this point, we're going to go ahead and submit this work. You can see that there are some changes that are unsaved. So when we hit save, it will go ahead and force a manual save, or force an auto save rather, of that file to Google Drive, and then it will push the changes through to the teacher. So if I jump over to the teacher side here, I can go ahead and open this up full screen, and we can go over to the speed grader now and go ahead and view that student submission. Okay. So we've got this grading interface here. You can see that the Kami tools automatically load inside of this grading window because this has been created using our integration. So you have access to all of those same tools that we've just been talking about to submit feedback to the students at the end. And yeah, once we've done that, we can submit the work back, and then the students will be able to go ahead and view that. Now, there is one last tool that I was going to cover with you guys. So let me go ahead and bring that up. So the split and merge tool is quite a useful one when preparing resources for the class. So this will be the last tool I talk through on the interface here. So you can find that option if you have a file open. It'll be the first option on this drop-down menu here, and also it'll be on this main screen of the window when you click the extension icon. So we'll go ahead and open that up in a new tab. So if I click the drive icon, I can bring in a file from my Google Drive. So I'll just bring in that same file we were just working with. So what this interface lets you do is add and remove pages from documents as needed. So we can jump into this file, and let's say we have an answer key at the end of the worksheet. We can take those 2 pages and then split those off from the main document and save those as a separate document when we export this. Now, this will never affect the original file that you start with. If you, say accidentally delete a page in this interface, don't worry. You can always refer back to that original file and its location to sort of, retrieve that. But the change, when you export these changes, you'll then have 2 copies of the files. In this case, one that will be the answer key, and then one which will be the assignment resource minus those 2 pages. So it's really good if you want to break up like a textbook and take individual exercises and push those out to the students. You can also take an excerpt out of a novel and push that out for closed reading without having to send out the whole book. The merge mode is also quite useful. So let's say we want to put in our own custom pages that we've put together ourselves. Say if we've got a Google Doc that we've put together ourselves with some custom instructions that we want to sort of merge in, we can then select that from our Google Drive. And once that's had a chance to upload, when I go back to the split mode, what will happen is those pages will appear in the bottommost row, and then I can take those pages and incorporate them with that original resource. Then when we export, we can then include that. We can also reorder these pages as well. And one last thing is that if you have a resource where it's always, loading in landscape by default when it should be portrait, rotating that in this interface and exporting will change the default orientation of that new exported file. And that is everything that I was going to go over today, guys. So at this point, I'm going to open up for questions. If you guys have any questions, feel free to unmute your mic and you can ask directly if you like. Everyone all good?
Shelly,
Yep.
do you want to ask your question that you put in the chat?
Yeah. So I've been using this for about a month, and a student will go in, and when they try to click on a comment or there'll be a lock on there, and it'll say their teacher needs to upgrade. And the same assignment with no problem, and the same student will have done other assignments.
I'm sorry, it's a little bit hard to make out what you're saying.
I'll read for you what's in the chat, and hopefully that'll get us clear. Shelly, your audio is a little messed up. It says a problem.
Really?
It says a problem I have encountered is that sometimes a student will go to do the assignment and there's a lock on the text box and audio comments. It's random students at random times, even when all other students were able to do it.
Okay, what that sounds like to me is those students are on the free version of Kami. First thing I would double check is, are they signing in with the correct account to Kami? If they're using a personal Gmail versus school account, that might account for why they have access in some instances and not others. If the students don't, if the students aren't on the license, that is something we can rectify if needs be. So if we either have a list of the students, we can update that as well. So if it is a legitimately they're signed in with the correct account and they don't have access, they should be able to. There's some things we can do around that. Either we can activate what's called auto enrollment on the license. So whenever a student opens up a Canvas assignment, we can have it so that they get automatically added to your license. The other way to do it, it's one way we can do it. It's probably the most easy way to manage it. There's other things we can do as well around. I'm not sure if this is domain-wide deployment already or not, but there are some things we can do around, say, rolling out Kami different OUs or rolling it out across different domains as well to ensure people have access.
Mr. Price,
so I can.
Mr. Price, do you guys already have your license fully taken care of?
Yes, we do.
Okay, because we have 2 schools on this call right now, Aden, and so that question was coming from our newcomer group. So have you already rostered your folks?
We did it a different way, but I'll talk to Ms. Sable.
Okay.
One off and we can work on it.
Okay.
yeah, there's a few different ways to push that license out, but if that does prove to be an issue moving forward, we can help with that.
Yeah. I'll work with Ms. Sable and anybody else that might have problems.
But if we make
Appreciate
sure
that.
to tell
Thank
the
you.
student to go through their Google account for AISD, it shouldn't be a problem.
No,
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. If it's a person, oh, sorry.
I don't think that's because our whole district doesn't have it. It's just our schools. And so and maybe I'm doing it wrong, but I'm having to keep up with our student lists and importing the new student data when we get students. And our problem, Aden, is that the school that I work with, we have constant new students all the time.
Yeah.
It's a lot of upkeep. But
Yep,
so maybe
I
some
get
that's
that.
not happening on quickly enough. And if you ever have that problem, let me know. And then that just means I need to do my job.
Yeah, one thing we could potentially look at doing down the line, if you've already got, like, if you're using G Suite and you've got different organizational units set up, we can have the license sync to those OUs. So when students get added and removed, then that will sort of update the license roster, like, to reflect that.
Reach out to you, Aden, separately about that, or is there somebody else I can reach out to about that?
Yeah, how about if I put the support email in the chat, that'll be the best place to reach out. Either myself or one of the other customer success team members will be able to help you get that set up. They just need some sort of verification that you are basically, an authorized person to do that. So if they know, what your position is and, the school email that you're going to use, and ideally the G Suite account, you need to have a Cami account under that same G Suite login. But yeah, that will be sufficient for us to set you up as the admin if needs be.
I know we had another question about students working on group work together, and I know that I've seen that done. Is there a way to do that when it's also integrated through Canvas, or would that have to be done differently?
It would have to be done differently, unfortunately. We are working towards getting group assignments into Canvas. As of right now, it only creates individual copies. So if you did want to do a group assignment, what I'd recommend doing is pushing out a Google Drive, or in fact, you can generate the sharing link within Cami itself to point them straight to the file. I'll just quickly share my screen to show you that. So if you create a sharing link when that will be a way that you can just quickly unsubmit this file. And if I just go up to the sharing link at the top there, I can copy this so that anyone with the link can edit this file. And then that will mean that everybody ends up on the same copy of the file together, and then they can collaborate on that. Now, if you're doing this for a few different groups of people in the class, you're going to have to generate 3 copies of the file and then share that link out. Yeah, that's just a caveat about that. Any other questions, guys?
I know there were questions from newcomers, especially about getting it integrated with Canvas. I'll send you all those instructions in an email in just a few minutes.
They should have that already, but they should have it already.
So
I was looking at the email, Mr. Price, and I didn't see the instructions for adding the app into Canvas.
I'll resend it. It's not a big deal. Just
search it. It's not there. I'd appreciate that, Chris. Thank you.
It's also worth bearing in mind that if the Canvas admin for the school adds Cami as an external tool, it can be added across everyone's courses so that everybody has it in place from the get-go. So if you want to avoid that step of individually installing.
That might work on your end, Mr. Price. I don't know if it'll work on ours since we have our individually created courses. But that's, I'll ask you that question separately too, Aden. We'll figure it out.
That's a good point. Yeah, that may well be the case.
All right. Well, if y'all need help, you've got the email there to reach out for the support, as well as Krista Hanks, and Mr. Price has time to mess around with it as well. So, Aden, we appreciate your time. And so those teachers for a newcomer, we're going to hop on Miss Hall's Zoom. She emailed that earlier today. And for Venture, we're going to hop on Miss Parsons' Zoom. And
it's Miss Johnson's Zoom.
Sorry, Miss Johnson's Zoom. Getting all my people mixed up. Anyway, and so anyway, everybody go that way, and then I will see the newcomer English teachers up in the library after Ms. Johnson's meeting. All right, y'all take it easy.
Thank you, Aiden. We appreciate you.
No problem. Have a good one, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for your time.